She had been stopped behind the SUV for some time, and it appeared that she had not moved. Since the roads in her neighborhood were so narrow, she couldn't pass anyone, which made her angry. The only thing she could think of to do was honk her horn, but before she did, she saw something in the back window. It was a moment that changed her life. Rebecca Lane changed her route to work that morning because she just wanted to get to work on time. One of her sons got sick and had to go to the emergency room, which was a bad way to start the day. Because her husband was out of town that week, Rebecca had to take care of everything. But Rebecca knew how to handle everything because she had been a mom and a wife for more than 10 years. She didn't know how a car could make her morning seem so bad. Rebecca had always been someone who worked hard. She and her family lived comfortably in a small town in Colorado. She spent her time working, spending time with her family and friends, and doing things she enjoyed. From her point of view, everything in her life was just as it should be. Perfect. But a simple sign in the window of a car would make her see everything differently. Rebecca had never seen anything like this happen before. Still, it got rid of dust in her eyes that she didn't think she had before. Most of the time, people are raised with certain rules based on where they grew up. Rebecca's neighborhood helped her pay attention to her family and herself. So, she gave her life so she could take care of the people she loved. She never paid any attention to people she didn't know. Rebecca had been up early on the morning of the accident before. She had her fair share of sick kids who had to go to the hospital in the morning, making her late for work because things at home weren't going smoothly. But even though she had done all of this before, it wasn't easy, especially since her husband was out of town. Rebecca would finish everything before she had to go to work. Jaden, Rebecca's oldest son, had a bad rash, so Rebecca put everything on hold to take him to the emergency room. After that, she took him home. After making sure he had everything he needed to be comfortable all day, she took her other 2 children to school and then went to work. Even though Rebecca did everything she could to get to work on time, time was not on her side. The highway was already jammed with morning traffic, and she knew she had to be smart, or she'd get in trouble with her boss. Rebecca took a different way to work so she wouldn't have to deal with anyone. Even though it was longer than the highway, the road would be empty. She didn't know what was going to happen. Rebecca took the planned route as quickly as the rules of the road let her. But she hadn't been on the road for long when she looked ahead and saw something that stopped her heart. When she realized what was happening, she spit out a curse. She was trying to get away from traffic that was standing still, but it looked like she had already beaten it to this road. When she saw it, she was still trying to figure out what to do. Before Rebecca got there, the only car on the road was a slow-moving SUV. Since the street went through a few neighborhoods, it was pretty narrow. Rebecca had been following it for minutes, her teeth grinding against each other as the minutes passed. When she noticed the car's back window, she stopped herself from blowing her horn. Her entire life was about to change. Before, Rebecca didn't pay attention to the sign because she was worried about her son and being late to work. But now that she knew it wouldn't hurt to learn something new, she looked at it closely. The sign said, "Learning stick, sorry for the delay." Rebecca's heart softened right away, and she started to think about things she'd never thought about before. Knowing this, I was very patient with their slow shifting, and to be honest, for people who were still learning, they did pretty well, Rebecca wrote on Facebook. She thought back to how hard it had been to learn how to drive a manual car for the first time. The anger she had been feeling suddenly went away, and she asked herself a very important question. Then I asked myself a hard question. If the sign hadn't been there, would I have been just as patient? I can almost certainly say no. This realization hit her like a freight train and made her think about things she hadn't thought about before. We don't know what's going on in someone else's life. We don't wear signs that show how hard things are for us. People don't walk around with signs on their shirts that say, getting a divorce, lost a child, feeling down, or cancer. But what could she do if someone learning to drive was blocking the road in front of her and she had to get to work? Rebecca took out her phone and dialed the number for her office. She said that she was going to be late because something had come up at home. Rebecca's boss was a family friend, so when she told him her son was sick, he didn't get upset. But Rebecca would keep telling secrets even after the day was over. She said on Facebook, "If we could see what other people are going through, we would definitely be nicer." She thought back to times when she should have treated people better. How often did she walk by someone without wondering how they felt? In her post, she asked people to listen to her revelation with an open mind. Would they hear what she had to say? We shouldn't need signs and reasons to be kind to people we don't know. Even if we don't know what's going on, we should do it anyway. Even if they don't deserve it. Before she drove to work that morning, she said hello to the stranger in the SUV and complimented him on how well he drove. "Let's give everyone more love, kindness, and patience. Have a good day," she said at the end of her post. But she had no idea that people would respond the way they did. Before Rebecca knew it, her Facebook post had 195,000 likes and 217,000 shares, and 10,000 people had replied to it. Rebecca had been writing blog posts and advice columns for 5 years and sharing them on Facebook from her personal blog page. However, her blogs had never gotten this much attention before. People had something to think about because of her, and her message is more important than ever. Well said. People get mad at me every day just because I can't go from 0 to 50 in 5 seconds in my standard car. I need to change gears. Society is very much stuck in a me-first way of thinking. Sad. Another woman said. The woman did make a good point. Over the last 10 years, a lot of people feel like society has become less caring about other people. They could be right too. If you feel like the world is getting more dangerous, you're not the only one. There have been a lot of hostile acts in the news and on social media lately. And, according to people who work in the service industry, like servers and flight attendants, people don't seem to have any common sense anymore. After the pandemic, it seems to have gotten even worse. Of course, the news only covers the most extreme cases of entitled Karens going crazy. Everyone remembers the mother from Connecticut who hit an elementary school bus driver and the woman from California who beat up a Southwest Airlines flight attendant. What's scary, though, is that psychiatrists say these stories seem to show a much deeper trend in America. Americans seem to have forgotten how to be polite, especially around people whose job it is to help them. Flight attendants who have seen it all say that people are making trouble on planes, and restaurants say that customers are being more rude than ever. One restaurant in Massachusetts even closed for a day in 2021, so the rude and demanding customers could give the staff a break. What's going on, then? Psychologists say that rudeness toward people who work in customer service is caused by a shift in power. Hans Steiner, a professor of psychiatry at Stanford University, says people feel almost like they have the right to be rude to people who don't have power. Especially when they come at them and remind them that they have to do their part to end this pandemic. Some researchers say that the internet is to blame for what they call gateway rudeness. A psychologist named Bernard Golden says, "We don't check ourselves as much as we used to. People feel like they can say anything on the internet. They don't protect themselves anymore. I think they bring this lack of moderation into public life. I think that's been made even more likely by the way we've been led over the past few years." Allison Green has been answering questions about the workplace on her popular website, Ask a Manager, for more than 10 years. During that time, she has noticed a shocking trend. Workers in every industry say that the public has become much more rude to them. Allison's email inbox is a good indicator of how rude people have been getting over the years, but the pandemic made it even worse. Some of the emails she gets are really scary. "I've worked in retail for over 10 years, and in the last few months I've seen people act in ways I've never seen before, even when there was a pandemic. It seems like war, rising energy prices, an ongoing pandemic, etc., are all coming together," says one email. "This has caused the public as a whole to act in some of the worst ways I've seen yet. People everywhere are really acting bad right now. I work as an executive assistant for the largest healthcare system in my state. Over the past 6 months, executives and board members have talked about employee safety," read another anonymous email. "Patients, family members, and visitors are being rude and violent in a way that has never been seen before. We had to increase security at our facilities to help protect our nurses, doctors, clinicians, receptionists, and other employees who work with the public." But it's interesting that Allison has also gotten emails from the Karens themselves. "I'm embarrassed to say that I've been rude to a few service workers and call center agents in the past 2 years, but it was over things that were out of their control or small mistakes that we all make at some point. I've never been that way before," said one email. "It's not an excuse, but the stress and isolation from the pandemic just got to me, and I acted like a jerk a few times because of it. A lot of the Karens know how bad they act and how entitled they are. But they say that the uncertain times we live in make it harder to be kind and understanding. I try to be as nice as possible most of the time, especially to people who work in it or customer service, but I've noticed that I'm getting more angry with people lately, especially when I'm worried about something else. Climate change, the pandemic, war, and the loss of faith in government and institutions are also big and out of our hands," said one person. "So right now it feels not only good, but also like I have the right to feel and act with anger. This idea is obviously wrong and hurtful, the person went on. But I have a feeling that a lot of the anger we show in social situations is an outward sign of anxiety and feeling like we don't have control over our lives, the email said. So, does this explain why people seem to be more rude these days? All of this makes Rebecca's post about how we don't know what other people are going through even more important, and people who read her story are trying to learn from it. Yes, really, we all need to remember that just because people act differently, like when they're impatient, angry, sad, or rude, it doesn't mean they're bad. Sometimes there's something going on in their lives, so the best thing to do is smile and be understanding. It always works, one person wrote. Another Facebook user who commented on Rebecca's post said it all. Everyone we meet is fighting some kind of battle. It's not up to us to judge them just because we can't see their inner turmoil. No matter what we know or see, it is up to us to be kind.